Hi guys, this is SDJRSNF88 speaking, and welcome to another update on the railway room. So as you've probably seen in the recent channel update, and of course with many of my social media posts, there's been plenty of progress on the railway room. There's been many milestones reached, and it's almost time to get properly started on the layout. So I've also been doing a bit of a recon mission, which we'll also take a look at in this update. So without further ado, let's get started. So one of the biggest bits of progress on the railway room and the layout since the previous update is the addition of the raised area or fiddle yard that will be positioned, or has been positioned, on my workbench. So as you can see, we've built up this sort of wooden shelf in a way, and this will house where the points will be to allow for a 2 or 3 road fiddle yard. I'm not too sure what I'm going to be able to get in. I possibly will be able to get 3 in there, but I've got a funny feeling one of the loops would just be too short to really be of any use, so it might just be 2. But I'll be obviously changing over rolling stock and stuff. As I do with most of my filming, I tend to change the trains over rather than putting them into a siding or something in between filming. So I'm not really that fussed. And of course, the workbench is more important than having a huge fiddle yard at the moment. So I think that was the main idea for having this. So behind me we have the vertical section, and now in the previous update I mentioned about having the possibility for having a shelf on there, and as you can see we've now got that shelf into position. That will obviously be used for stock boxes and storing rolling stock and other bits and pieces, so I'm really pleased with how that has turned out. Then of course, to get trains from the actual fiddle yard onto the layout, we have to have a tunnel portal, and as you can see we've got a portal cut into the vertical section here, and that will be where Devonshire Tunnel will be. And as you can see, you've got the tunnel mouth there. It's obviously lower than what it's actually going to be when obviously all the landscaping has been put in. It'll be raised up, so it'll be the correct height there. One of the party tricks for the workbench, to give me a bit more space if need be, is this. I've decided to make the centre section removable, so that way I can use my full cutting mat here if I've got a big project on the go, and if I obviously want to run trains, I simply pop it back in, and obviously there'll be electrical connections here which will allow me to connect it all up and obviously have it running again. I thought this would be really key because I know that sometimes when you're modelling projects it can get out of hand very, very easily, even for the most smallest of projects. So having all that extra space I thought would be really key for this. So let me know what you think. I'm really pleased with how it's turned out so far. Of course, all this needs properly bolting down. This is just temporarily sitting on there at the moment. And of course, I plan to varnish this, much like the rest of the workbench. Again, because it's that horrible blue paint. So I want to make it nice and shiny. And of course, so it protects the wood and, just makes it more aesthetically pleasing. So while we had the woodwork tools out, we decided to raise the bridge section in front of the door. Now the reason for this is because obviously the whole track bed is going to be raised up, so I would need to put a raised section actually on the lift out board itself, which is of course not ideal. So by simply raising the board, that problem is solved. So as you can see, we've got the same sort of lip system that we had that was originally on the board, but it's now much higher. It's actually raised above the board. And as you can see, here's the bridge section. It simply slots into position like so, and once in position there'll be some little brass bolts like this one here, the sort of lock you find on the back of a bathroom door or something, one on either side, and basically the track connectors will be soldered to that. So once you push the pins in, that will provide electrical circuit through this section of track that's on the board and allow the train to continue. Then of course you pull the bolts out and you can simply lift the board out. Now of course the great thing about having it raised is it means there's now more height for me to sort of crawl underneath. The main thing with having that is I'll probably leave it in position pretty much most of the time, because the door obviously does open with it even down. But obviously if I want to move my works chair in, which of course is not in here, so I could obviously set up the camera, I will need to lift out this section. So it's a simple method, but hopefully it will work. Let me know what you think. Of course, I still plan to sort of fiddle around with the electrical idea, but I think that simple brass bolt idea will work. So of course, any thoughts, leave them in the comment section below. So one of the most challenging and enjoyable things I've been working on over the past couple of weeks is this, and it is of course constructing Watery Bottom Viaduct, which will be the centrepiece for Lyncombe Vale. And as you can see, it is now complete and I'm just over the moon with how it looks. This is my first scratch build structure, and yeah, like I said, I'm just blown away with how it has turned out, and I just hope I can get the layout to this standard. So as you saw in the previous update, it started off life as 3 wheels single arch bridge kits, which I then stitched together, and I added on brick sheets to obviously raise the height and make it longer and wider. I then used the stone sheets to obviously add the stonework on there, and then I individually cut stones out of those sheets and then sort of stitched them into the arches, much like the real stones on the real bridge. And as you'll see later on in this video, I pretty much got it, well, I think spot on. I think I only missed 1 or 2 stones, and that was on a side that wasn't as well photographed as the side that I'm actually modelling. So on a whole, I'm really pleased with how it's turned out, and hopefully it captures the look and feel of the real structure. However, Watery Bottom Viaduct is not the only thing that I have been working on towards the layout, and that is, as you can see, adding the backscene. Now, the backscene is really key to any layout. This is something I really found out with Fry's Summerdale, and I keep on getting comments from you guys, saying how cleverly the actual scene is blended into the backscene. That's something I want to try and achieve with Lyncombe Vale here. Now, the actual real location, it's sort of set in a valley, there's lots of lush trees, but there's also houses from the outskirts of Bath in the background, and that is quite a key dominant feature on the skyline in the actual scene. So I wanted to try and achieve that with the layout here. Now, of course, trying to find a back scene that matches that location is quite hard. However, I came up trumps with this particular scene here. Now, this is from ID Backscenes, and I believe it is their outer suburbs set, or one of their outer suburbs set. And as you can see, we've got a number of buildings blended into the trees, much like the real location at Lyncombe Vale. So what I've done here is mounted the scenes onto a piece of hardboard, which has then been curved around the wall of the railway room, giving this lovely sort of nice curved effect, which will obviously of course be blended in with the scene as and when I get round to adding it. It is a self-adhesive back scene, so it was a real doddle to fit. I'm really pleased with how it sort of mounted onto the board, rather than trying to spread PVA and then it bubbling and of course creasing, and it really is quite awkward. So these self-adhesive back scenes are really, really handy and quite clever. I plan to continue the scene on the other side, which will of course be where Combe Down tunnels to, but I still need to mount the hardboard there, so I can obviously put that bit of the scene on there. There are still a few other little bits that need adding. There's the section above the tunnel mouth, above Devonshire Tunnel, I should say, here. I've got another bit of the scene there to go on there. There's a couple of houses which are closer to the photographer, whoever took the back scene, so they will be ideal for above that tunnel mouth there, recreating those buildings that you could see in many of the shots of the railway back in its heyday. Now, there is another piece that I will need to add, and that is from a completely different back scene. When it comes to the viaduct, you can see that the hardboard will be exposed. The reason why it's got a sort of an exposed bit of hardboard around the bottom is because obviously the track bed being raised, this will all be basically covered behind it. However, when it comes to the viaduct, you can see through the arches, and of course you will see that exposed area. So what I've cleverly done is I've purchased another section of a different back scene which has a very similar number of buildings which are basically similar to the ones in that location, and that will be stuck into that position there and then cleverly blended in with foliage and other bits and pieces, much like how I done the road on Fry's Summerdale. So with the back scene in place, I decided to lay out some of the track to give you guys a rough idea on what I'm trying to achieve. But of course, trying to explain what I'm trying to do here, the scene I'm trying to recreate, is quite difficult. However, there is one thing that basically speaks louder than words, and that is of course the real location. So over the Christmas break, I have taken a trip to the real Lyncombe Vale on a bit of a recon mission to get a couple of photographs, to obviously help with the design of the layout, and of course take pictures of Watery Bottom Viaduct for a future article in Railway Modeller. And basically I decided to film a little video of the scene, basically walking you through the whole of the section that I'm trying to model here. So without further ado, let's take a trip to Lyncombe Vale.
So you join me on the steep climb out of Bath on what was once the Somerset and Dorset Railway. And in front of us is Devonshire Tunnel, and it'll be a short walk through this tunnel. It's about a quarter of a mile, I believe. And when we come out through on the other side, we will be in Lyncombe Vale. So we are now emerging from Devonshire Tunnel into Lyncombe Vale, and this is where the layout will be based. You can see the tunnel mouth there behind me, and in front of us is the valley itself, and we're going to take a closer look at some of the structures and of course the landscaping for reference to use on the layout. So we're now standing on the first of 4 bridges in Lyncombe Vale. This is a little sort of crossing which it crosses over a stream, which ironically I didn't know from the pictures I had, so that's very, very helpful. Much of the actual structure is gone, as you can see here, but most of the stonework remains, which is going to be very, very handy for building the walls for the embankment. So we are now standing on top of bridge number 12, which is affectionately known as Watery Bottom Viaduct. Now this is the structure that will be the centrepiece of the layout, and I've spent many, many weeks constructing hopefully a faithful replica of this very bridge to use on the layout. As you can see, the stonework is a real patchwork of the original stonework and the replacement blue and red bricks, which when the structure needed reinforcing. So hopefully I managed to capture that. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at the structure. So I've now just come off the track bed after inspecting the bottom of Watery Bottom Viaduct, and I'm now standing in where I believe one of the most iconic shots of Lyncombe Vale was filmed by many a great photographer, and of course Ivo Peters himself. So this is a view of the valley, and as you can see there's Watery Bottom Viaduct just coming away from Devonshire Tunnel on its way to go into the cutting just before Combe Down Tunnel. So we are now entering the cutting, which takes us under Moses Farm Bridge, which is another bridge structure on the line. There's lots of evidence of the railway being here. There's a number of telegraph poles, and there's also a number of ballast bins still in position. So I've taken note of those with photographs, and hopefully I'll be able to recreate those on the layout as well. So we're now crossing over the fourth and final bridge in this section, which is another viaduct. I can't remember precisely the name of this one, but this one is a real mixture of stone, more so than Watery Bottom Viaduct. So this could be really fun trying to create this one. This one will be on the second board shortly before it plunges into Combe Down Tunnel, which is 1.5 miles long. At the time of construction, it was one of the longest unventilated tunnels in the UK. And of course, you can still walk through this. Really is a wonderful place to come. So if you do get a bit of free time, do pop along to come and see this wonderful location. Hopefully see what I'll try and recreate in model form.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this latest instalment on the railway room, and of course that visit to the real Lyncombe Vale, and hopefully we'll be able to create something very similar in model form here, and hopefully you'll be able to see the similarities between the real location and of course the model. So there's going to be plenty of stuff to get on with in the next update. You finishing off the back scenes, and of course shaping the terrain. That's one thing that I'm sort of been putting off, but once that is actually started, I can then start putting everything into position, laying out the track and getting it at the right radiuses, ready to actually get it all running, and of course putting all the scenery on it. So as always, leave your comments in the comments section below. Let me know what you think, and I look forward to bringing you more progress on the railway room and Lyncombe Vale very soon. So I guess that's all that's left for me to say is this has been SDJRSNF88 speaking, and thanks for watching.